procedure over a surgical procedure. Sources estimate that there could be over 1.5 million patients who would consider non-invasive body contouring if they knew a solution existed. The body contouring industry is worth $4.8 billion. If people are 5 times more likely to get a non-surgical procedure over a surgical procedure, then sources estimate that the non-invasive body contouring industry is worth $4.8 billion. These clients walk through your doors every day. I want to share with you a way to capitalize on this huge market opportunity. The Zerona, we feel, is the right procedure for this, and there are many reasons why. First of all, the Zerona is the only non-invasive device that's cleared by the FDA for circumferential reduction of many body areas. We have FDA clearance for waist, hips, thighs, and upper arms. Also, we are the only device that allows you to treat the full circumference of the body, all 360 degrees, in just a 40-minute treatment cycle. We do this with zero pain, zero bruising, zero swelling or downtime, as well as absolutely zero side effects. We have very high customer satisfaction and have actually completed over 1 million separate treatments, and again, that's with zero adverse events. The Zerona also grants your clients the ability to focus on stubborn areas that they have found resistant to normal diet and exercise. We have the highest brand awareness of any offering in the non-invasive body contouring marketplace. The Zerona treatment is very easy to perform. It's pre-programmed and also is an unmanned treatment, so no additional staff is usually required to get going with the Zerona. And of course, this allows you to add incremental revenue to your business. The Zerona has been featured on many different programs and national magazines. In fact, we've been on the Dr. Oz show 3 times. Dr. Oz loves our technology because it's so safe and effective, and you'll see here many other programs that we've been featured on. In fact, on Fox News, a Lifetime Fitness executive was quoted as saying, "We've been blown away by the success we've had with the Zerona. The treatments changed lives and confidence as well as physical appearance." We'd like to help you add technology like this to your business. And basically, the Zerona, we feel, is the right solution. Over 9 million clients search for body contouring or related products each month. And while 9 million are searching, Zerona has the highest body contouring brand recognition of any product in the marketplace. In fact, over 350,000 Zerona searches are performed on the internet monthly. In fitness and retail centers, the Zerona providers currently average 10 or more clients treated per month. The average revenue they obtain from each Zerona treatment, a 6-treatment package, averages $1,500 across the U.S. Why not take advantage of this great revenue opportunity by adding Zerona to your business? To give you an idea of what this looks like, essentially, you can acquire the Zerona technology for an average monthly payment of $1,200. With the average treatment giving you a revenue of $1,500, your break-even is really just 1 client per month. The actual device comes with a 1-year warranty. We come to your facility and spend a full day training your employees on how to get the best results with the Zerona. We then offer online marketing, website and SEO services that are $10,000 value to get the word out basically in your marketplace that you offer this very popular service. We have unlimited online and virtual training available to you on an ongoing basis, and continued marketing support through our portal, which is your access to the support services that our company provides. To take a look at what this means to you in terms of a return on investment, if you were to treat 8 patients per month, which is quite easy to do, and each paid $1,500, that would bring a gross revenue into your business of $12,000. If your payment is $1,200, your profit in that month would be $10,800 for an annual gross profit of close to $130,000. Take a look now at what the numbers look like if you treat 10 patients a month. You can see that your annual gross profit then comes to $165,600. And if you treat 20 patients a month, your annual gross profit is just shy of $350,000. So it's obvious that the opportunity is very compelling, and we'd love to share with you details on how you can add Zerona to your business. Feel free to reach out to me if you have questions. At this time, what I'd like to do is to introduce you to Ryan Maloney. He is our Chief Research Officer and the co-developer of the Zerona technology. You see his email address here, where you're free to reach out to him. But Ryan is going to spend the rest of the hour to introduce you to the science behind the Zerona. The Zerona has more solid science behind it than any other product available in the aesthetic industry, and Ryan will share the details with you now.
Hello, and welcome to the Zerona webinar, a discussion regarding how this technology can serve as a synergistic therapy for dietary and fitness programs. What Zerona is, in the most basic of terms, is a catalyst. Being the only FDA-cleared device today in the United States, cleared to treat the waist, hips, thighs, and upper arms for the purpose of circumferential reduction, this technology, in its an innocuous approach, its safe approach, can serve as a catalyst or a means to bolster or reinforce current programs so that individuals see results faster, achieve milestones or goals at an accelerated pace or rate. So that this idea of motivation, or the importance of motivation, is instilled. Allowing people to hit goals faster means that they're willing to refrain from consuming these inappropriate foods, or they're willing to participate in more physical activity to not achieve, but rather preserve what they were able to achieve or accomplish with the Zerona technology. So Zerona, in a very basic viewpoint, is a catalyst, a powerful catalyst that can accelerate any dietary or fitness program, burning faster that fat, isolating and targeting that fat. And we'll see how it's all possible with this technology. As we briefly mentioned, Zerona is FDA cleared as a low-level laser device for the disruption of the fat cell. Adipocyte is the medical term for fat cell, within a specific fat layer, so that that fat can be released and then ultimately processed. And all of this is for non-invasive aesthetic use. And this clearance, specifically for waist, hips, and thighs, was granted in 2010 for the safety and efficacy, as well as not for the temporary, but a long-term sustainable outcome. And in 2012, the Zerona technology was FDA cleared to treat the upper arms for upper arm circumferential reduction. So this independent body, with the FDA's clinicians and technicians reviewing the data, determined that based on the amount of data supplied and based on the meaningfulness of the data, the clinical utility of the application, this technology, the Zerona platform, deserved or earned the first ever FDA clearance for circumferential reduction of the waist, hips, thighs, and upper arms. No other therapeutic approach, whether it's pharmaceutical or surgical, has been able to achieve this type of clearance. We want to highlight the temporary feature because most other technologies that claim body contouring, although not FDA cleared, they may have a temporary outcome. And it's important to understand that in the eyes of the FDA, that it was appropriate not to supply this technology with a temporary label, meaning that once the patient achieves the slimming or contouring outcome, it is up to them to maintain or preserve this clinical result. What is Zerona's target? How is it possible that this laser application can achieve FDA clearance, the first ever FDA clearance? How is it able to contour an individual's body at a specific focused area? Well, Zerona's target is no different than the target that diet and fitness programs attempt to exploit or attempt to treat. It is the enlarged fat cell. And after puberty, we have the same number of fat cells. We rarely accumulate new fat cells. But what does happen is that this cell can expand nearly 1,000-fold in volume, 20-fold in diameter. Simply put, it's like taking a new water balloon that's lean and contracted, putting it under the faucet, and watching it accumulate all of that water and expanding to tremendous volumes. Essentially, that's what our fat cell's doing. It is accumulating the lipid material that we have consumed, and that results in the cell's expansion. Zerona attempts to deflate this fat cell safely and effectively, targeting specific areas. And this is really the limitation of traditional approaches. Now, although traditional approaches, the dietary and fitness regimens, are critical for an individual's long-term health and success, but where the limitation, and it is an important one, resides is the inability for these programs to target a specific fat pocket. When we wake up in the morning and we say to ourselves, today is the day that I'm going to diet and exercise and change my life. And we look down at our love handles, or we look down at our pocket of subcutaneous fat and we pinch it and we say, and I would like you, body, to burn this specific area first, please, so that I can wear my bikini or so that I can wear my bathing suit and feel better about myself. The problem is the body's not as obedient as we would like it to be. The body doesn't take that command and implement it. The ability for dietary and fitness regimens to burn fat is a random and sporadic process. It requires the release of hormones. Those hormones must travel through our blood, and our blood system is going to deliver it where there is an adequate supply of blood vessels. And if a fat pocket, as depicted here, has an inadequate blood supply, well, unfortunately, those hormones, whether it's thyroid-stimulating hormone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, they're going to fail, or at the very least be limited in their ability to permeate that tissue layer. And so there is no specificity. There is no ability for us to do crunches and burn the fat above our abdomen, above that skeletal muscle layer. That's not a viable or feasible outcome. It's random and sporadic. And that ultimately is the impetus for an individual's failure or an individual becoming ultimately disheartened. That they want to lose a specific pocket. They want to fit into a specific pair of pants. But yet, with the body's inability to acquiesce or become amenable to the demands of the individual, because it cannot burn that fat, people become disheartened and ultimately depart or deviate from those appropriate lifestyles. So no fitness or dietary program, in summation, can select a primary pocket of fat and remove that first, above and beyond all other pockets. And this is where Zerona really does serve a vital role. It is able to target a specific pocket of fat. It is able to target an enlarged group of fat cells, successfully deflate those cells, that the volume within that area can be removed or displaced very quickly. In a matter of fact, in 2 weeks. So what we see here is that we have a sequence of images. So let's take our time through this particular slide and look at figure 1. What figure 1 shows is a grouping of 3 separate images. The image on the left, that's our enlarged fat cell. That's a cell that has accumulated far too much material, lipid material, and has expanded. That's ultimately going to contribute to the obese or overweight appearance one demonstrates. What we see, however, after just 6 minutes of Zerona treatment, we have a major alteration within the integrity, the structural integrity of that cell. What we see is now the removal or liberation of that stored fatty material. We've disrupted the cell's protective barrier. By disrupting its barrier, we're now allowing that fat to leak out. Think of it this way. Go back to our water balloon analogy. We just get done filling our water balloon up under the faucet. We have this massive accumulation of water within that balloon. What Zerona does is it's like the subtle pinprick to that water balloon. If we take the membrane and slowly puncture a hole, not exploding the cell, but creating a small puncture, and we put that water balloon down on the table, what ultimately is going to happen? That water is going to begin to leak out of the hole we've just created. And slowly but surely, that water balloon is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller. And eventually, it's going to go back to its original size. That is the same pathway or mechanism that is observed following the treatment with Zerona. That we disrupt that protective outer barrier of the fat cell here, basically creating a hole within that membrane. That hole is going to now serve as an exit for the stored fat. And once all of that fat finally drains out of the cell, what's left is a completely collapsed and deflated fat cell. Now imagine billions of fat cells within a specific anatomical area. Let's say our love handle. All of these fat cells have accumulated material and have expanded 1,000-fold in volume. When we introduce Zerona and create these small openings within all of their membranes, that fat's going to slowly leak out within a targeted specific area. And when that fat leaks out, those fat cells deflate or collapse. And that's going to give rise to that contouring effect, that slimming effect, because we're displacing the volume. And there is no better image than Figure 2. Figure 2 shows the discrepancy between a portion of fat that received adequate treatment and a portion that received inadequate. The lower portion, we see voluminous fat cells. And these cells contained fat, but they did not receive adequate Zerona treatment. Hence, the membranes remain intact. That fat is unable to exit or vacate the cell. But the upper portion, here we see fat cells that have been adequately treated. A transitory pore or temporary opening or hole, if you will, has been formed within the membrane of that cell. All of the fat has leaked out, and the cells now have collapsed in on themselves. And we can see the disparity in volume. Voluminous cells in the bottom portion, deflated cells in the upper portions, and there's this beautiful demarcation, this line that separates the two. All of this, using laser energy to deflate fat cells, has been published over 17 times in medical journals, all validating the clinical outcome, the transformation of the fat cell subsequent to this treatment. More importantly, as we showed earlier, the FDA clearance, all of this data has been provided to the FDA, and the FDA has made the determination regarding the safety and effectiveness of this parameter of laser, the Zerona's ability to deflate enlarged fat cells, to remove the volume so that we can contour or shape a specific targeted area. So in conclusion, what we see is that over time, our cells become hypertrophic. That means just simply accumulating material and becoming enlarged. That's the medical term for enlarged tissue, hypertrophic. And so these cells become enlarged because they've accumulated lipid material, triglycerides, primarily. What Zerona does is it safely and effectively disrupts that protective outer barrier, creating an opening in which now the fatty material can exit through, and that will in turn result in the collapse of the fat cell and ultimate return back to that lean, collapsed state. Now, it is important to mention that all of this is achieved without killing the fat cell. There are plenty of procedures on the market today that proudly kill the fat cell. Whether you're injecting a a hazardous liquid into the tissue, resulting in fat cell death, or you're sucking out the material, or aspirating is the correct term, aspirating out the material with liposuction. All of those procedures proudly declare or promote death of the fat cell. But here's the issue. The fat cell is just simply not the garbage can in the body that we can simply remove it if we feel it's necessary. The fat cell is actually an endocrine organ. It participates in autocrine, paracrine, and endocrine pathways, communicating with the entire body. This article in Molecular and Cellular Endocrinology summarizes it beautifully in the title, Adipose Tissue as an Endocrine Organ. Your fat cells release hormones known as adipokines that regulate energy balance, insulin sensitivity, which basically promotes a mechanism that allows insulin or cells to respond better to insulin. Blood coagulation, helping clot blood. Glucose metabolism, helping to break down glucose. Feeding behavior, helping to control your feeding so that you feel full. These are all mechanisms that in some way or fashion are regulated by the fat cell. So Zerona does not go in and destroy these cells because we appreciate and understand the biological benefit of this tissue. And therefore, we introduce a mechanism that deflates the cell but preserves the overall endocrine function of this cell. So we looked very briefly at some of the images earlier, how the transitory pore or temporary opening serves as an egress or exit for the stored fatty material. And so all of the stored material vacates or exits the cell through this disruption in the cell's membrane. Well, this was actually conducted at the University of Chicago, this study. So again, let me set up these images for you. The upper left image represents pre-treated fat cells. We can see how enlarged they've become based on the overwhelming accumulation of lipid material. Now the bottom right image is a control sample. These are fat cells that have been filled with fatty material but have not been exposed to any variables except for the environmental elements. And the takeaway here is that at 120 minutes, the fat cells still remain enlarged. They still have their characteristic shape, this circular or elliptical type shape. But here's the difference for the middle sequences of images. We expose these cells to 6 minutes of Zerona. 635 nanometers just indicates the color of light that is ultimately emitted by the Zerona laser. So here we've treated 6 minutes and we went back and looked at the cells 15 minutes later. Let's see what's happened over that period of time. Well, we begin to see the early stages of that membrane breakdown. Laser has initiated a cascade that is finally culminating in the breakdown of that cell's protective barrier. That is now providing an exit for that stored fat. The stored fat is beginning to vacate the cell. And when we look at the cell 60 minutes later, after treatment with Zerona, and we compare that to the control sample, we see a dramatic difference. The fat cells treated with Zerona have now completely collapsed in on themselves. And when we compare that to the control sample, we see that they're still voluminous and round, and we can see a discrepancy between the two. That the Zerona laser, the only variable introduced, ultimately caused or initialized the collapse of the fat cell. So an important question is, where then does the fat go? We've released it. That's a powerful outcome. That's a meaningful outcome. But where does the fat now go? It's theoretically just sitting outside of the fat cell. And this is where natural fat metabolism comes into play. When we're dieting and exercising and doing all of the right things, what are we doing? We're basically creating an energy demand that must be satisfied by our natural fat reserves, the fatty material that we have stored and accumulated. But remember our limitation there. We are not drawing fat from a specific isolated area. Instead, it's random and sporadic. It's coming from arbitrary places. The arms, the neck, the breast, the knees, the buttocks, the love handles, coming from all of these areas simultaneously, maybe more in one area than another. Zerona is only different in one way. It's just releasing fat from one area rather than from multiple areas. So it is still meeting our energy demand that we create during a fitness or exercise program. That energy demand must be satisfied. We're giving the body a specific source of fat, specifically from your love handles or wherever Zerona treated. And so we're no different in the process of fat metabolism than natural fat breakdown that we would experience when dieting or exercising. Your body needs to convert triglycerides into free fatty acids. In order for your body to do that, it requires this complex cascade that diet and exercise can take many, many weeks, perhaps months to initiate. You have to release all those hormones, thyroid stimulating hormone, epinephrine, norepinephrine, just to break down triglycerides into free fatty acids. It's an exhaustive process and it can take many, many months. Zerona bypasses all that. Zerona skips that, circumvents that, and says, what we'll do is we'll release the triglycerides and we'll let the lymphatic system break down the triglycerides into free fatty acids so that the body now utilizes these free fatty acids for energy. So once we create free fatty acids, we're no different than natural fat metabolism. Your body needs to burn this fat for energy. We're giving a healthy or rich supply of free fatty acids in a specific area. So your body, your heart, your liver, your muscles are going to take those free fatty acids and they're going to burn those free fatty acids. And those free fatty acids ultimately derive from one specific area. So we're still meeting the energy demand. We're not violating any principles of thermodynamics. We're not creating energy. We're now just providing the body with a specific source of energy. Think of it this way. If we have 3 separate farms and we need to feed a village, and every day we took one piece of corn from one farm, another piece of corn from another farm, and one piece of corn from another farm. And 3 pieces of corn fed the village. And every day we did that same thing. So we would slowly use corn from each individual farm. What Zerona does is it says, hold on, let's provide 3 pieces of corn from a single farm. And so we don't need those pieces of corn from that other farm or the other one. So we're still feeding the village. We're just getting all of our corn from one farm. Now, it's a crude analogy, but essentially, we don't need the fat from the arms. We don't need the fat from the neck. We don't need the fat from the buttocks in order to drive energy. We're giving you fat from the love handles instead. By using this laser approach to release the fat, we're giving body unprecedented access to this stored fatty material. And that's the difference. We're not violating principles. You're creating the energy demand. We're feeding that energy demand from a specific area. And when we meld the two or blend the two together, patients are happy because all of that fat from one area has dissipated, has been removed. That's a powerful tool to have. Now, we're talking blood and fat. And whenever we talk blood and fat in the same sentence, there's a problem. It's usually never a good thing. It usually means that you're being prescribed a statin. If you hear blood and fat in the same sentence, someone's telling you that there's a problem. The good thing is that Zerona, at no time, whether it's 1 treatment or 6 treatments, at no time point will it elevate or alter the blood chemistry. We will not see a rise in triglyceride levels, cholesterol levels, or low-density lipid proteins at any time. And the reason for that is because the lymphatic system is successfully and safely breaking down all of the fatty material we're releasing. And therefore, by the time the lipid material reaches the blood, it would have already been broken down into a safe form, which commonly travels through the blood, and that's the free fatty acid. Now, rest assured, we have a publication in the American Journal of Cosmetic Surgery, volume 27, pages 177 through 184, that shows definitively that there is no elevation in triglyceride, cholesterol, or LDL levels. So this speaks to the safety of the application. And it is this data that ultimately enabled the FDA to provide an FDA letter absent of any concerns or risks of altering one's blood chemistry. Now, we did perform an extensive clinical trial to evaluate appropriately the clinical utility of Zerona. Now, understand that this FDA clinical trial could not include diet, could not include exercise, could not include hydration, lymphatic stimulation. It had to be what we refer to as a dry study. Real treatment versus fake treatment. No other confounding variables or components that could influence the results at all. We enrolled 67 subjects. 35 received treatment with the real laser, 32 received treatment with the fake laser. Now understand that the patient had no idea what type of treatment they were getting. They were blindfolded, and the fake laser actually emitted some red lights. So the individual, unless they were a laser physicist, they would be unable to differentiate between the real laser or the fake laser. But also they were blindfolded. Now, as I mentioned, we could have no exercise, no diet, no supplements, and we delivered 6 treatments. We delivered 6 treatments every other day for 2 weeks. So patients received treatment on Monday, Wednesday, Friday the first week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday the second week, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday the first week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday the second week. So every other day. Each treatment now, let's look at the Monday treatment for instance. The patient would walk in, greet the staff, go into the treatment procedure room, go down to their bare essentials, the bra and underwear or underwear for gentlemen, so that we have direct skin exposure. They would lay comfortably on the treatment table. They would get 20 minutes of front treatment. So they're lying on their back, getting exposure to their front abdomen, waist, hips, and thighs. And then they would flip over and they would receive an additional 20 minutes on the back side. Why 40 total minutes? Well, we want to provide the individual with a 360-degree treatment. So we have to do 20 minutes on the front, 20 minutes on the back to provide the correct dosage and to give that nice symmetrical slimming. The every other day protocol is important to keep those fat cells open so that we drain more fat and that the body has enough time to remove that fatty material. So let's look at the clinical data now. Without diet, without exercise, without any adjunctive components whatsoever, treatment group patients, and remember these patients had no idea what type of treatment they were getting. Treatment group patients lost on average 3.52 inches. What did the fake laser group or sham group demonstrate? A total reduction of 0.68 inches. So what does this mean? The hips lost over an inch. The waist lost just about an inch. And the thighs collectively lost 1.5 inches. This was statistically significant when we compared with the fake laser group. And of course, this data was valuable and meaningful enough to earn peer-reviewed publication in 2009 and also allow for the FDA clearance of the device in 2010. So again, this was without diet, without exercise, just the laser on its own. So does this actually mean anything to anybody? And in order for us to appropriately answer that question, we have to collect what is known as subjective data. Subjective data is essentially the patient's interpretation of the results that they were able to achieve. So we had patients fill out a satisfaction questionnaire. And again, this is all before they knew what group they were enrolled in. So they didn't know if they received the actual laser or the fake laser. And we asked them to rank their satisfaction of the procedure based on their results. Only 3% of test group subjects were dissatisfied. The remaining percentage were either very satisfied or satisfied with their overall result. This was a statistically significant difference when we compared to the control group, where a majority of individuals either were neutral or dissatisfied. So when we look at this result, what this is demonstrating, or ultimately revealing, is that individuals could perceive and interpret their result in just 2 weeks. That the 3.52 inches observed at that second week was meaningful enough for that individual not to give or report a dissatisfaction rating. So here are some basic before and after images. These before and after images are your typical 3.5 inch reduction. What we're trying to demonstrate or illustrate here is that these results without diet or exercise could yield a meaningful result. So we have many before and after images that we could go through in greater detail with you. This is just a topical cursory overview. This older female individual tightened her belt to a certain notch. Took her before images with that belt tightened to a specific notch that she wears every day of her life. After Zerona in 2 weeks, she went back, tried to tighten that belt back to the same notch, and we ultimately see how loose that belt is. It's lagging down a bit. That shows the dramatic change in her overall waist contour. Although it is off-label, we can see that treating pseudogynecomastia, which is the accumulation of subcutaneous fat, has been utilized by several clinicians. This, of course, is off-label for the FDA, but clinicians can choose to practice medicine as they see fit. So the clinician here, Dr. Mullen, treated pseudogynecomastia, male breast tissue. We can see the result that was observed at week 2. He received before and after images. Let's focus on the image on the right here. The images on the right depict subcutaneous fat that has enlarged along the mid-back area. We can see that this resulted in a dimpling, if you will, of the tissue, this indentation. Same anatomical position, we can see a beautiful contour in 2 weeks. And again, this is without diet, exercise. This is just Zerona. Now, we do have other clinical trials that substantiate the overall clinical utility of Zerona. This was a 689 subject study that was published in 2012 in Lasers in Surgery and Medicine journal. The important parameters of this study was to show that fat was simply not redistributing elsewhere in the body. It wasn't leaving the waist, hips, and thighs and storing in, let's say, your neck or your arms or your knees, that it was being removed from those specifically treated areas and being ultimately metabolized and processed and removed from the body rather than simply just going elsewhere in the body. So this study treated only the waist, hips, thighs, and we can see the total reduction was 3.2 inches in 2 weeks across the treated areas. But when we took measurements at systemic non-treated areas, we did not see a circumferential gain, which was predicted. That would have supported the idea that we're just redistributing fat. Instead, a circumferential reduction was reported, bringing the total inch reduction to 5.1 inches, or 5.17 inches to be exact. So this shows 2 things. One, the results are reproducible. Regardless of the population, whether it's 67 or 689, the results are reproducible. And 2, the fat is just not being redistributed throughout the body and stored elsewhere. That, in fact, it is being metabolized and broken down and removed ultimately from the body. Now, over the years, since Zerona's FDA clearance, we have partnered with reputable firms in the United States, Lifetime Fitness, and these are just a few of our partners: Thin Centers MD, Lifetime Fitness, Lindora Clinic. Facilities or institutions that have championed or espoused the dietary and fitness philosophy. They have championed weight loss programs, fitness facilities, in order to yield the best possible result. But with their years of expertise, they have recognized and identified the limitations that we discussed earlier. That there is no major flaw in fitness and dietary programs. There is just one limitation, that the effort necessary generally yields limited results. And it's those limited results that ultimately leads to an individual's departure from that program. They just simply become disheartened. Or they're exposed to the food item, whether it's at a party or at work. They're exposed to that food item. They get the pressure from their peers. They consume it. They've realized how much they've missed the double chocolate layer cake because they've been depriving themselves of carbs as they've been participating in a ketogenic diet. And then they go into that cake, take a big bite, and they realize how tasty it is. And their body releases endorphins, kicks in the addiction, and unfortunately, they start to fall off the bandwagon and then go down once again in that inappropriate lifestyle. Or let's say it's not that. It's the promotion or the second or third child. All of these circumstances converge, and that leads to an individual's inability to sustain a specific program. And so recognizing this, knowing that motivation was key, these key partners adopted our technology in order to satisfy or fulfill that role of instilling motivation. And they knew that Zerona, based on the clinical backing and support, it could ultimately serve as that catalyst or impetus in their already well-established programs. So for instance, Lifetime Fitness, before they adopted the technology, wanted to perform their own trial. Within the fitness facility, they brought in PTs, those are personal trainers, they brought in members, executives, and they performed a trial with over 50 patients. They treated individuals for 6, and they also knew that they had a high percentage of obese clients, so they wanted to implement a 12 treatment protocol, not your typical every other day for 2 weeks, but every other day for 4 weeks to yield or generate a greater circumferential reduction. So they demonstrated a total loss of 4.65 inches off the waist, hips, and thighs in 2 weeks with 6 treatments. With 12 treatments, they lost on average 7 inches. So that is evidence that more treatments means a greater reduction. That means you get deeper and deeper and deeper within the fat layer as those superficial fat cells collapse. So with this clinical outcome and recognizing how it could motivate their clients, how it could serve as that catalyst for the member stepping into their fitness facility for the first time in years and wanting to maximize their results, to achieve the best possible outcome, Lifetime Fitness adopted this technology and integrated this technology across all aspects, all components within their fitness entity. Dietary component, nutritional component, personal training component, yoga, swimming, tennis, getting people the best possible results with this technology. Now we see with other clinical trials the powerful benefit that Zerona can yield when complemented or coupled with a standard diet. Thin Centers MD looked at 88 patients with a BMI range between 21 to 45, so a normal weight to morbidly obese individual. They had a treatment range of 6 to 18. Obviously, the 21 BMI received 6 treatments. The 45 BMI received 8 treatments. The overall circumferential reduction across the waist, hips, and thighs, and based on the overall clinical treatment time, ranged from 3.75 inches to 26.8 inches. That means the 45 BMI, after 18 treatments, lost 26.8 inches off their waist, hips, and thighs, coupled with a low-calorie diet. That is a powerful outcome. And so that's the catalyst there. When we can achieve something that diet and exercise can never achieve on its own, when we can now complement those principles, so diet and exercise, with technology, we give a more powerful outcome. Now, when we look at low sugar diets, Dr. Roy Hinman of Florida performed a 44-patient study. Patients lost in 2 weeks 10 inches off their waist and hip only. That was a change of their BMI or body mass index of 2. So that's a powerful clinical outcome when complementing Zerona with a low sugar diet. So when we look at why they're so powerful when combined, well, it's very simple. Diet and fitness, they both do one thing. They both stimulate our cells' respiration. Basically, our cells' overall energy production. Kicks it into high gear. That means more energy is consumed, and that in turn means more energy needs to be produced. So exercise does it by building skeletal muscle. That means on a daily basis your body needs more energy just to perform basic function, because the skeletal muscle is thickened. Therefore, more of our naturally stored material, whether it's sugar or fat, needs to be burned, and that means we're slimming. Or nutrition, depriving ourselves of the 4,000 calorie days and just consuming your basic 2,500 to 2,000 calories a day. That with low fat, low sugar intake, that's going to force our body to use more of our stored fat and sugar, and therefore start to slim the body. Zerona does not replace these aspects or components. Instead, it supports the functionality of diet and fitness. But it does it in a unique way. It releases fat from a specific area. So when you implement the dietary and fitness program, you know that the fat you're attempting to burn is coming from one area. And you know that that's supported by over 18 peer-reviewed publications. You know that is an FDA cleared claim. So that the fat that you want targeted, you can now target with Zerona. And that can be accelerated with the dietary and fitness program that you have implemented and mastered. So collectively, technology melded with the standard philosophy of diet and exercise can produce the best possible result, motivating your clients so that they are able to have sustainability in their overall clinical result. So with that being said, I truly appreciate your time. I am more than happy to communicate in greater detail through email so that we can understand and appreciate the overall clinical results in greater detail. Due to time constraints, I just went over the science in very basic terms, but hopefully I was able to elucidate the synergy that exists between Zerona and fitness and dietary programs. I appreciate your attendance, I appreciate your time, and as always, I appreciate your attention. And I wish you a pleasant day. Thank you.
Please refer to my contact information on this slide, and if you would like to download this information so that you can get in touch with me, just click the Download Now button. I'd be most happy to discuss with you on an individual basis any questions you have and also share with you more about this great opportunity.